and jump to page 180. I'm going to stick with Abraham a little bit. And this is a beautiful example. He's talking about Sarah. A lot of focus here on Sarah. So it's the same three guys, by the way. They arrive and they want to know, where's your wife? You know, and he says, well, she's in a tent. And then Shlomo's wants to point out that she's always in a tent. Why? Because of what the tent symbolizes and what she symbolizes. In this case, we're talking about a very, well, you could say, oh, it's a lovely story, you know, or you could take it seriously and try to make sense of it. Well, I'm taking it seriously and trying to make sense of it, and I might be wrong, but here's the way I make sense of this thing here. And if I do that, then it fits right into the system that I am peddling here, this way of thinking in terms of Platonic thinking. By the way, the Zohar is a lovely example of Neoplatonic thinking with all kinds of Jewish metaphors. And here we have a perfect example of something that fits right into the Zohar. So first, Shlomo says, maybe I'll open it up so I get it right, 180. He says, she wants more than that. You know what the woman wants. She wants to be holy, but she wants more than that. She wants the Holy of Holies. You know why the woman is the one to bring children into the world? Because she's connected to the Holy of Holies. So now we got to figure out what's the Holy of Holies here. They ask him, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, where is your wife? And he answers, Hine ba'ohel, she's always in the tent. She's always in the Holy of Holies. She was there long before me. Now, if anything is a very profound Kabbalistic sense, that certainly is. She's always in the tent, and she's always in the Holy of Holies, and she was there long before me. Now, in other chapters here, we have Shlomo saying that Abraham was the beginning of Judaism. If Abraham was the beginning of Judaism, then what was she doing in the Holy Holies before he began Judaism? You see, it becomes very, very profound. Now, I'm sure there are lots of people that spend their whole lives studying the Zohar that can do a better job at untangling this one than I can. And you could write a PhD thesis about it if you want to someday. But I'm just going to tell you right off the bat what I think here. All right? Let's see, where is this thing about whispering? Ah, here it is. So God whispers to Sarah, you're going to have a child. And he goes on to say here, what really happens is that God prays and we answer. God is asking of Sarah all the time, please pray for a child, please pray for a child. And then the whole thing that what characterizes Judaism, the way it should be, is that the parents really pray for the child. Okay, so we have a bunch of different things that logically don't make sense at all unless you happen to filter them through some Neoplatonic metaphors of the Kabbalah, especially the Zohar is a good place to find that stuff. So, if we think of going to the tree of life here, there's the Sephirot. So we have Chochmah on one side, Bina on the other side. Chochmah is symbolizing Adam, Bina symbolizing the female side, Sarah. Then we have and Sarah in that sense. The Bina is like the upper mother. And then we have the same parallel thing happening at the level of Malchut, the lowest Sephirah. There we have related to the lower mother, where somehow all the ideas coming around from the higher Sephirot are somehow or other fertilizing some substrate in the world and giving birth to the world. So we have the higher mother and the lower mother. Okay, now, here I'm going to make a comparison, which I know is a little bit far-fetched, but it's the only way I can make sense, at this moment, make sense of what Shlomo's saying here. Again, I say you don't have to make sense of what Shlomo's saying. Most people don't. They just enjoy the music and just listen to the words like kind of an emotional, spiritual massage or something like that, and just don't take it very seriously. And if you, so most people, you don't want to hear about this. But if you do have any interest in hearing about it, how does this sound? Now, if we think of what comes out of the objective history, there's the endless spiraling here. For example, I do gestalt work with a person for 3 hours. At the end of the session, I ask the person, "Well, what did you get out of the session?" The person says, "Oh, well, I realized that I should be more expressive, or I should be, life is more beautiful than I thought, or I realized that I want to allow myself to express my feelings more." Whatever that big word of God or existential message is comes out of it. It's almost as though God is talking to that person. They call it the Word of God. Now, what if God is talking to the person in that process? What could it be that's going on in this other process, which is not a spiral, which is of some two separate realms, macrocosm, microcosm, separated by an impossible gap? You know, what could be going on there? It can't be the same talking to God. It's got to be something different. So what do we find here? God whispers. God whispers to Sarah. And instead of the Word of God coming out of the process in the spiral, after the 3 hours of working with an endless series of opposites, here we have somehow God is whispering some pre-logical message to Sarah. You better start doing your spiral, or something like that. You better start praying. But somehow that's happening before the spiral even happens. So it's on a level of pre-speech, or before the Word of God. And it's before, excuse me, it's before Abraham starts the Jewish world going, you know? It's pre-something or other, the pre-world, before or after or beyond or something or other. It's some other realm. So that whispering idea is very important. Okay? And so he's whispering her that she better start praying, she better start doing the spiral, okay? Or something like that. All right. So in that sense, and by the way, this in if you open to the Zohar, especially, I have this wonderful book by Leo Shaya, which is called The Universal Meaning of the Kabbalah, and there you find a whole discussion about the Shekhinah. So we have the Shekhinah here, the living presence of God in the world, somehow symbolized by the Holy Mother. And so here Sarah is symbolizing the parallel between the Shekhinah down here in Malchut and the relationship between in the lesser face of God in parallel to the greater face of God, Arik Anpin, where we have the pure relationship in the mind of God and the pure ideas with Chochmah and Bina. So, and this parallel here. So in that sense, Sarah, being in the sense that she's reflecting the Holy Mother, the higher mother of Chochmah Bina, is somehow and in that Holy of Holies, before Abraham appears on the scene even, as an individual. She's there representing the very basic relationship between Chochmah and Bina, as it's paralleled in the relationship between the Shekhinah, and which is God's presence in the world, and our world. Okay, so, and it's pre-speech rather than the Word of God. This is before the Word of God. It's a little inkling that's somehow there before we get to rational thinking and intelligible language. Now, there's an exercise that's very lovely. I wonder if I have time to do this on this video. I'm going to just check how many minutes I've got on this video for a second. I've got 9 minutes. I don't know if I'll make it, but let's see if I can do this. This exercise I learned in a theater workshop from the Mabu Minds Theater Company, and I'm grateful to them for teaching this to me back about 40 years ago. 38 years, 37 years ago maybe. It's called the pre-speech exercise. It's a little complicated, but once you get the idea, it's simple. Although a lot of people have trouble doing it, a lot of actors, I find it hard to teach it to them, but I personally find it not so difficult to do. All right, so here's the idea. You tell somebody, think of some image, you have their exercise, prepare images. So you tell somebody, think of some image, I got an image right now, I'm going to do it. And allow yourself to talk about the image at first, and then allow your language to dissolve. Allow your speech to dissolve into what we're going to call pre-speech, something on a lower level than your rational idea of what a word is. So if I do that now, I say, and another thing is I shouldn't tell you what my private images are, because I've only got a few of them right now, and I don't want to make them public. Because actors need to protect their privacy, so I'll protect my privacy. I'm going to start somehow talking to myself about that image, and allow that. Then I'm going to kind of see the image in my mind, project it. I'll project it on the wall there, over your head, and I'm going to zoom in with my mind, make a zoom shot, and allow the image to directly affect my gut somehow or other, where the sound is coming from, and just somehow open up the door. And they say chokhmah potech sharim, with the idea will open the gates. Okay, so let's see if I can do that now. I'm seeing my image over there. Okay, see my image, and now I'll start using gibberish to describe myself. Okay. So I see okay, what did I do? I saw an image of something. I allowed it to magnify, felt it down here somehow in my gut, and I let that energy affect how my talking was coming out. And then as I was doing that, I was listening to the sound. What does that remind me of? What does that sound like? And at first I found it sounded like fear, but then maybe at the end it sounded like laughing. I don't know. There was something about fear and laughing, okay? But I didn't get to the idea of fear and laughing, which are rational words that fit into the Aristotelian way of thinking in terms of opposites. Rather, I allowed something pre-logical, the pre-speech, some instinct, It's almost as though I'm allowing God to whisper to me what noise should come out of my mouth. And once it started coming, that was the idea of prayer. Some direct contact between me and some otherness that I'm pouring my soul into. And then once I started hearing my prayer, the sound, then I started saying to myself, now, if this is a prayer, I didn't think of prayer now, but if I think back at it now, if that was a prayer, then it was a prayer about fear, it was a prayer about laughing, maybe the idea of Yitzchak even, So you see the way it worked. It worked on a pre-logical level. And in that sense, I can make sense of this is what God was doing. And in this sense, Sarah, who is a good actress and able to do pre-speech, and representing the Shekhinah process here, and the Chokhmah Bina relationship, was able to be there long before Abraham, because Abraham can only be on the level of a person that can describe his experience in words, at least so far anyway. Of course, Abraham is also a symbol of the Tzimtzum process, but somehow or other, this Holy of Holies that Shlomo is indicating here, I get an association of, in those days, maybe now of course to now also, a lot of people were into a lot of drug trips. I mean, even I played around with some weed. And maybe Shlomo had some experiences with LSD or who knows what, and maybe he was trying to suggest some of that stuff. By the way, when I think about this, we think, we can find direct parallels in the world of art. If we think of, when I opened up a book here, a description of El Greco. If you ever saw his distorted picture of, I don't know if you can see this at all, this is his picture of the city of Toledo, where he used to live in Spain. And you see the picture of the landscape is just, it looks like it could have been painted by Van Gogh. Whether Van Gogh was copying Greco was copying Van Gogh, which is impossible because Greco was about a few hundred years earlier. But anyway, you have this idea of art, which is just kind of beyond the image, they say, you know, in the Mastermind theater world. And if I could find the way this art critic here describes it, it's very nice, fits right in. He was obsessed by figures and had attitudes of strain and agitation, and evolved a style of composition in which the human models are stretched beyond their normal length to conform his ideas of rhythm and movement, by expressing the ferment of his own spirit like a fiery furnace, a world in which the bodies of men and women are pulled out of joint like elongated specters, with eyes staring heavenward and arms leaping upraised in a struggle to escape the flesh and lead to salvation in the tongues of flame, etc., etc., etc. There's no end to this. The separation of body and soul, or flesh and spirit, etc., etc., etc. Men whom the pleasures of life have not tempted, creatures in the thrall of a mystic vision, etc. Okay, so if that isn't a description of a Shlomo Carlebach minion on a Friday night, you know, I don't know what is, you know. The way these people jump around, and you know, you got, of course, I don't go quite that far with it, but some of these people are like, imagine in Simchat Torah, you know, you got bodies distorted, faces, the whole business, because it's pietism, what's called pietistic religion, Hasidism of the Breslov sort, you know, Judaism. So there's this whole tradition, and that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about is the covenant, the Platonic, Neoplatonic covenant of Abraham Avinu, in contrast to the classical art version of dialectical thinking that you find in Noach. Okay, I'm going to get to the end of this. I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll decide what to do about the next video.